Well, welcome to the Crook The Book podcast, where three pastor friends discuss the Bible and how it connects to life and local church ministry. I'm Luke Miller. I'm here with my coworkers and friends, Jeremy Muncie and Andrew Balich. So today we're going to be discussing this past Sunday's sermon from Mark 10. So let me read the passage for us. It'll be verse 46 through 52. It says, "And they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, 'Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me.' And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, 'Son of David, have mercy on me.' And Jesus stopped him and said, 'Call him.' And they called the blind man, and saying to him, 'Take heart, get up, he is calling you.' And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, 'What do you want me to do for you?' And the blind man said to him, 'Rabbi, let me recover my sight.' And Jesus said to him, 'Go your way, your faith has made you well.' And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way." All right, just a reminder to you listeners, we love to hear from you guys. Questions you have, things you'd like to hear us address, go to our website, westwoodcma.org. Click on resources, Crook the Book. There's a very short form you can fill out there to submit any question you have about the Bible or the Christian life. All right. Jeremy, how would you briefly summarize the message that you preached on Sunday?
It was, I hope it was meaningful to folks, but it was just a picture of what it looks like to cry out in faith to Jesus, like genuine need and faith to Jesus. And so I think the big idea that I said was Jesus is the son of David who has mercy on those who cry out in faith. And that's how I'd summarize it. I mean, it's part of an inclusio. I mean, there's a lot going on in chapters 8 through chapter 10. And I think what Jesus is doing is highlighting the blindness that the disciples had, that his followers had, to his mission, namely to go and to die, to be crucified, and then to raise after 3 days. They were blind to that. And him healing these two blind men, I think, is kind of a picture of the healing that he was going to do for the disciples and their blindness so that they might see the purpose for his death and resurrection. So I think that's the big picture of what's going on here. But within that, you have this kind of end bookshelf, this kind of I guess you'd say this period on the story that is the picture of him healing the blind man. And it's a beautiful picture of not only him healing the unbelief, in a way you could say, of the disciples, but just practically speaking, he's healing a blind dude's eyes in that moment out of love and compassion for him. And so there's just a lot going on. It's the Gospel of Mark is, sometimes people think it's just the simplest gospel. It's it is. It's just short, and it's not super detailed at times. But Mark really plays with these literary devices. You know what I mean? He really does a good job of having these inclusios and these chiasms and all these things that point to larger things that are underneath the surface.
So speaking of a larger theme, why is it significant that Jesus is the son of David? You talked for some length about that on Sunday. Why is that such a significant theme in the passage?
Yeah, I think it's a significant theme because I think that's the main thing that is somewhat missed by so many of his disciples. Even though they get it, they don't get it. Like, who is this son of David? What is the purpose of this son of David? And so many were blind to the fact that Jesus was the Savior King of Israel. And if you go back to the Old Testament and you read in 2 Samuel chapter 7, there's this promise that's made to King David that he's going to have a son, and that son will have a kingdom, a dominion that will last forever. Well, then time goes by and kings are born and he has sons, and they have sons, and they have sons, and generations and generations, and there is no king that doesn't die. That's kingdom lasts forever. And so like there's this question, it was like, when is he coming? Where is he? And in fact, really the kingdom dynasty there was no longer a king in Israel ruling. And they're like, well, what is going on here? You know, I'm sure the Israelites are, what in the world? They're hoping that maybe someday by military force or power or some miracle, they're going to take back over the region that they're in that's under Roman rule. And they're hoping that a king will be established, and Jesus comes on the scene, and he proves that he's the son of David. But it's interesting the way that he gets his victory, and his victory is all about his death and resurrection, and he's trying to make it clear, and they just aren't getting it. They're blind to that because they're looking for this military leader.
Well, the very next passage that we'll look at next week is a triumphal entry, right? He's entering Jerusalem with all of this fanfare for the exact same reason you just mentioned. The people are expecting deliverance from Rome. And it's almost anticlimactic at the end of the next passage, because he goes into Jerusalem, all of the hosannas being shouted and the cloaks and the palm branches and all of this. And he goes to the temple. The text says he looks around and then he leaves, goes back to Bethany.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay.
What's he doing?
Yeah, it's not the immediate deliverance that they're looking for. And of course it's leading into the Holy Week, the last week of Jesus' life. But yeah, I think it was really interesting. You pointed out that this was the only time in Mark that the Son of David is used.
Yeah.
That Bartimaeus is claiming that, and that really, I think you summarized it, was helpful. That as you did the survey of the Old Testament, he's that name, Son of David, or that identifier, really speaks to his identity and his mission, who he is and what he's come to do. And how fantastic is it? It's this guy who is sitting there blind that recognizes Jesus as the Son of David, and recognizes his identity, recognizes his mission. And what a contrast. You pointed out too, with a difference between that and James and John in the previous passage, right? And I think you said when Jesus asked them, what do you want me to do for you? James and John want to be seen, but Bartimaeus wants to see. And what a contrast there between those who are close to Jesus and this outlier.
Well, this theme of exaltation through humiliation it's prevalent in Mark's gospel. This idea that the way to greatness is really to be a servant. Yeah. And how is Jesus going to become great? How is this great Son of David going to rule and to reign? He's going to do it through service.
Right.
He's going to lay down his life
as a ransom for many.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just hit on that so well, just last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. And I think what's going on here, and there's so much in that Son of David phrase. I mean, he's going to come in as king, and he's going to come in and scope out the temple. Then he's going to cleanse the temple as a way of literally doing away with the temple. And then he's going to, in his body, be the temple. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. There is going to be a meeting place between God and man, and this king is going to bring that meeting place about. But that meeting place is not a building made with stones. That meeting place is Jesus Christ. And so, the significance of Jesus being the Son of David it's huge. I mean, you could talk about that forever, but that's hopefully just a little taste.
Speaking of Bartimaeus, in what ways is he a great example of faith in this story? Bartimaeus, the blind man, how is he a great example of faith?
I think it's interesting to me that Bartimaeus is a foil to the disciples that are telling the little children to get away. And also at the same time, you know what I mean? He's a foil to the rich young ruler. Bartimaeus, he recognizes that you need to come to God with childlike faith. There's nothing more childlike than literally laying on the ground, blind and helpless as a beggar with nothing, and saying, Son of David, the exalted one. Look at me. I'm down here. Have mercy on me. That is childlike. I mean, I thought of the publican and the tax collector. The tax collector beating his breast. Be merciful to me, a sinner. That is kind of the spirit that you get here. And also, too, so he's childlike. Jesus said, of such is the kingdom of heaven, those with childlike faith. And at the same time, he's willing to sacrifice and give up everything for Jesus. He leaves his cloak behind, which was everything that he had, really. It's what he would have used to receive funds when he was begging. It's what he would have used to keep warm at night. He just jumps up, leaves it behind, and goes to Jesus. And so I think he's an example of faith in that he's childlike and that he's also willing to leave everything to follow Christ.
Yeah, he's an example, too, in the exercise of faith, which is when Jesus asked him the question, right? What do you want me to do for you? In verse 51, the same question he had asked for James and John. Jesus does this a lot, and I've noticed in the Gospel of Mark as we've gone through it, where it's like, okay, like Captain Obvious, this blind man just came over and said, have mercy, right? Like, what could he possibly want other than to receive his sight,
Right.
And he's done that time and time again with desperate people. And I think it is because he wants them to exercise their faith,
good point.
To ask, right? To actually verbalize what they need, to trust him enough to do that, to not care what other people think around enough to do that, all kinds of reasons why that exercise of faith. So I think he's another example of faith because he's willing to answer maybe a seemingly obvious question from Jesus. He's willing to continue to profess his faith by his answer, even when it might seem silly to him. He's willing to just continue down the road with Jesus as much as Jesus wants to draw his faith out. And then the other thing is that where you ended the last verse,
52. Yeah.
Yeah. When he recovers his sight after Jesus says, you can go your own way. What's his way? It's now with Jesus. He goes and he follows him on the way. And so you really have his childlike faith at the beginning, all the way through this exercising his faith to willing to give up, sacrifice everything for Jesus, to ultimately the discipleship aspect of now following Jesus. He's kind of a complete picture in that regard.
He really is. Yeah, that's good.
So why is it so important, guys, to recognize our need for Jesus? And in what ways does God remind us of this need?
Yeah, I want Andrew to answer this one first, but I have some thoughts and ideas as far as what ways, but go ahead, Andrew.
What ways God? Well, I mean, I think the reason it's so important to recognize our need for Jesus is just, what Jesus has been teaching through the Gospel of Mark with the little children. For such belongs the kingdom of God. The rich young ruler, right? Going away sorrowful because he had many possessions. There's there's the time about the disciples, right? They're kind of the object lesson so many times of arguing about who's going to be the greatest and who's going to sit on the right hand and the left hand. And right there, they're in a sense kind of recognizing their need of Jesus, but it's for what they can, it's like self-promotion, how they can get something out of it. And so I think the lesson when you look at Jesus' ministry through the Gospel of Mark is you need to recognize your need for Jesus, because it's only those people who recognize their need for him that actually receive him, right? And so we better recognize our need if we want to experience the salvation that he offers. Because if there's anything else in the way, any way that we conceive of ourselves in a way that's not needy, it's an obstacle to what we receive from Jesus. So it's the way of salvation, right? It's the narrow road. It's the narrow road.
You can't cling to the gospel, which is the power of God into salvation. It's the only way to be saved is through the gospel. You can't cling to that unless you actually think you need it. I put it alongside of repentance. Unless you repent, unless you recognize that you've sinned, that you've offended a holy God, and that you need forgiveness, why would Jesus ever seem valuable to you? If you thought that, I've done enough good stuff, I'm a good enough boy, I'm a good enough girl, then why do you need Jesus? You have to recognize that you're not good enough. You have to recognize that you have sinned. You have to recognize that he is good enough. You have to recognize that the only way for you to be saved is by putting your faith and your trust completely in him. It's everything. And I love one of the things that, Myron Dahm always says, and I just love it. He says it all the time, Jesus, we need you. That should be the constant prayer of the believer. Jesus, we need you. And, in what ways does God remind us of that? I think he does it in a number of ways. But I'd say for every person, it's different. Some people, he will remind them of their need for him by taking a relationship and blowing it up in their life, whether it be a spouse that leaves them, or a parent that disowns them, or a child that just rebels, or whatever. For some, it's a health issue. For some, it's, some kind of a sin struggle that shows you think you're a good boy? Look what I'm going to allow you to struggle with. I'm going to help you through it. I'm going to grow you through it. I'm not going to keep you there, but I'm going to show you what you would be apart from my grace. You need me. And, there's a number of ways that God does it. And sometimes he does it in all those ways in all of our lives, you know what I mean? Kind of at the same time. But God will not let you get to a point. He loves you too much. He won't let you get to a point where you just believe you're okay. I'm okay on my own. No, he's going to give you some reason to cry, Abba, Father.
Yeah. I think often of Zach S. Wine, a guy who I had in seminary, talks about how we think about God's, like, some of his core attributes, like omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. God finds ways to remind us that we are not those things, not to, not so that we'll give up all hope, but to make us dependent on him.
Yeah.
And I think you could add a whole host of things, right, to those things that God is perfectly that I'm not. I can't be present everywhere for everyone, right? I can't be all knowing about what someone in this situation needs, or even what my own heart needs, or whatever it might be. And the Lord finds a lot of ways to remind us that we are part of the reason we need him is because we're not him, and finds ways
That's a good way to put it.
To show us that. Yeah,
it's good.
All right, good discussion, guys. We'll end here on a random question, as we typically do. What is one unnecessary comfort in this life that you would hate to give up, but that you would be willing to give up if, the cause of Christ or some other worthy cause demanded it?
Define necessary.
Ooh, that's good. My mind went there too.
An unnecessary comfort, I probably mine that would make my life the most miserable would be the removal of air conditioning. Ooh. So if I had to give up air conditioning for the rest of my life, that would be a bad day for me. But there's a lot of things that I enjoy, but as I thought about it, that was probably what I would miss most if it was taken away.
Yeah, maybe a physical comfort would be a good way. Like, let's all talk about physical, because I don't want to be like, I don't know, my wife, or
definitely don't want to say that.
You don't have to be married to serve the Lord, but it sure is nice.
I was defining necessary. My wife is necessary. Jesus is necessary. Yes. The Bible is necessary. These kind of things are necessary.
I think we're talking clearly of a first world blessing that we could live.
That would be a better way. Yeah. Okay. That's a better way to word that question.
A cushy thing in our life that we really like, but that yeah.
Man, that is so hard. I mean, one of the things that, and it's very simple and very is just, I don't know, being able to get in a car and drive where you want to go and get there quickly, for me, because of my job, is so awesome. I can't imagine being like, oh, so-and-so's in the hospital. Let me start today so that I can go pray with them tomorrow. That'd be rough. So transportation, I don't know. Quick transportation would be
with air conditioning. You know, it's a beautiful
thing. That doesn't break down.
Thing.
Yeah, that doesn't break down. You know, and that's been not always the case for me. So,
oh man, my mind goes to a lot of things, which may not be a great sign of where I'm at. But I think I'd have
my
to say,
Legos,
right? My collections. Probably coffee would be the one.
Oh,
I would
nice.
Really hate to give up.
That'd be rough.
I've even the times in life where I drink too much of it, which I'm probably in that phase right now, and I try to cut it back, to a more reasonable amount. Don't particularly enjoy those days.
Yeah.
So let alone having it completely. We've all been to a conference or something where, like you thought there was going to be coffee, then there wasn't.
Yeah.
And you're just like toast, and you realize how dependent you become.
Yeah.
Become on it. So that would probably be it for me. Yeah.
Let's talk about whether or not caffeine is a drug. No, I'm just teasing.
That's right.
That's another episode.
Is Pastor Luke addicted?
What about glucose? Is sugar? Is sugar? No, go ahead.
All right. Well, join us next time. The Crook in the Book, maybe for that discussion. No, probably not. But thank you for joining us for this one. Glad you're here, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for another episode. This one's produced by Tommy Macias. Our outro music, if it's actually playing this time, is by Gregory Allen Isakov.